Rise of the Bondless Queen Part 2. Chapter 10, A Throne Beneath the Throne. The Moon Throne was never built on stone alone. It was built on a grave. Kale couldn't sleep. Not because he was haunted, but because something beneath the palace was calling. He felt it every time he passed the throne room. A low, guttural thrum beneath his feet, like a heartbeat hidden in marble. And tonight, when he touched the cracked edge of the shattered moonstone pedestal, the floor responded. A single rune ignited beneath his palm. Fire, the symbol of the first alpha. Then the floor shifted. And opened. The staircase below the throne wasn't carved, it was grown. The stone was raw. Veined. Alive. Kale descended alone, armed only with the dagger Elira had once worn at her side. The walls pulsed the deeper he went, casting silver light that flickered like memory. Every few steps, he saw murals, some unfinished, some scratched out. Wolves. Moons. Throneless queens. And one figure repeated again and again. A man with Kale's face. Wreathed in fire. Crowned in bone. Bleeding from the mouth. At the bottom, Kale entered a wide circular chamber lined with altars, each sealed by runes from a time before the bond. At the center, an ancient slab of dark obsidian, slick with dried blood, untouched by time. Two handprints carved into its face. One larger. One smaller. One marked Alpha. The other marked Throne. Between them, a prophecy. Not written in stone. Not inscribed in metal. Etched in bone. He stepped closer. And read the words aloud. When the ninth moon darkens. And the bond is broken by will. The blood of Alpha and Throne shall awaken. The buried king. One will rise. One will fall. One will rule the world reborn. Kale traced the carved hand labeled Alpha. His spiral mark flared, unbidden. The runes responded. Then he touched the other handprint. A flash of silver burned into his vision. Elira. Standing on the ashes of the Moon Palace. A crown in one hand. A blade in the other. Her eyes glowing with magic not born from the moon. But standing behind her. Not Kale. A shadow. Tall. Familiar. Korean. And he was smiling. Kale staggered back, gasping. Blood dripped from his palm. The altar had bitten him. But when he looked, a new rune had burned itself into the base of his wrist. The mark of the buried king. Not a warning. A title. He was no longer just the Moon Alpha. He was something waiting to return. When Kale emerged from the hidden stairwell, the air felt thinner. Louder. The palace recognized him differently now. Guards stepped back without knowing why. The bondless wolves that remained bowed, out of instinct, not loyalty. And Kale didn't like what it felt like. Because it wasn't his power. It was the old power. The kind that didn't rule with love. The kind that ruled until it burned everything. Later, alone in the Moonfire Garden, Kale whispered the only word that pulsed behind the altar. A name he hadn't spoken in centuries. A name not written in any current scroll. He whispered it. And the moon turned gray. Velker. And in the shadows, something opened its eyes. Chapter 11, The Heir Who Isn't Kale's. They brought the child to the gates at dusk. No guards. No war horn. No fanfare. Just a woman in tattered cloaks and silver-dipped chains, dragging a child who looked half wild and half royal, and leaving behind only a name. This one belongs to the Moon Alpha. Kale was in the training yard when Merrick brought the boy forward. He froze. Not because the child looked like him, though he did, in a strange, twisted way. The same silver-streaked hair. The same angular jaw. Eyes too sharp for his age. But it wasn't the face. It was the mark on his shoulder. A faded crescent, pulsing dimly beneath the skin. The mark of a bonded bloodline. Cale stumbled back. "That's not possible," he muttered. "The bond is broken." The boy said nothing. He just stared up at Cale. And whispered one word. "Father." They brought the boy to her chambers that night. Elira's spiral mark burned the second he crossed the threshold. He didn't cower. Didn't speak. Just stood like a shadow pretending to be a child. She knelt before him, her voice soft but sharp. "What's your name?" He blinked slowly. Vale. Not a name she recognized. But it sounded chosen, not given. "Who's your mother?" He looked past her, toward the open window where the moon struggled to rise. And said nothing. But the spiral on her hand flared again. As if it recognized him. "I never knew of him," Cale insisted. "I would have remembered." You don't remember anything from before the bond snapped," Elira said coldly. "Not fully. Not when you shift. Not when you scream in your sleep." He tried to speak, but she stepped forward. "Cale, the mark on his shoulder isn't just bonded. It's yours. It's your line." Cale clenched his fists. There's only one way that mark could have reawakened. And that's if. He froze. If the bond hadn't died. If a piece of it survived somewhere outside their reach. Elira summoned Naira to enter the child's dream. The blood dream. The dangerous kind. The one only walked by witches trained in forbidden shadow. Naira sat beside the boy's bed, marked her palms, and slipped into the ether. She returned shaking. Her voice ragged. "He has memories that aren't his. He's being fed images. Of a life with Cale. Of a mother with white eyes and spiral tattoos. He calls her the Silent Queen." Elira's stomach turned. That wasn't her. And it wasn't Lyanna. It was someone else. Someone older. He found her alone in the Hall of Echoes, where voices of past rulers sometimes lingered in the stone. "You shouldn't keep the boy," Corian said. Elira didn't look at him. "I'm not killing a child." "You may not have to," he replied. He wasn't sent to kill. He was sent to remind you, you are not the first. And you will not be the last. Elira turned sharply. "You know something." Corian smiled faintly. "I know Vale isn't Cale's son. He's the bond's. A leftover piece. A memory that grew teeth." That night, Elira watched from the shadows as the boy knelt on the balcony, whispering to the moon. He didn't know she was listening. But his words were clear. "She wears your flame now. But I carry your voice. And when the 9th moon rises, I will bring her home." Elira stepped back, heart pounding. Because the voice he used. The rhythm of it. The magic wrapped around each syllable. It was Valesi's. Chapter 12, The Queen Who Drowned the Moon. Legends are written by victors. But erasures are written by kings. After Vale whispered in Valesi's tongue, Elira could no longer ignore the burning in her mark, or the visions in her sleep. She scoured the moon archives for any reference to a Luna who had ruled without bond, before her, before Lyanna, before even the first recorded Alpha. But every ledger stopped at the same name, Velker, the first Alpha. No queen beside him. No Luna recorded. Not even a note of refusal. It was as if the throne had sprung into existence without a partner. And that was the lie. Merrick brought her a scrap of parchment unearthed during palace reconstruction, wedged in the cracked base of a collapsed shrine. It wasn't labeled. Not even titled. Just a single, aged passage, scorched at the edges. She ruled for 9 nights and 9 storms. Unbonded. Uncrowned. Unforgiven. The wolves followed her not from duty, but devotion. Until the throne demanded her silence. They drowned her in moonlight. And gave her no tomb. Only a whisper. Ceres, the sunken queen. Elira left the palace before nightfall with only Naira and Merrick at her side, riding north toward the flooded vale, a mist-covered hollow at the edge of where the Crescent River dies. No one had visited the vale in decades. The waters moved with no moontide. No boat had ever crossed it twice. Some said it swallowed voices whole. Naira guided the boat, using blood sight to chart the mist. At the center of the black water, they found it. A sunken temple, cracked and broken, rising in jagged pieces from the lake like the ribs of a drowned god. Its steps were slick with moss and grief. Elira descended first. Inside, a dome etched with crumbling murals. 9 women, each depicted with different eyes, different scars, different fates. All bore a spiral on their palms. One had her mouth sewn shut. One held a crown made of thorns. One bled from the eyes, smiling. And at the center, a queen half submerged in silver water. Golden hair coiled like roots. A crown beneath the surface. And an inscription carved in teeth-shaped glyphs. Ceres. She drowned to save them. She rose to forget them. And she will return to finish what the moon would not. As Elira stood before the water, her spiral mark flared violently. She collapsed to her knees, breath stolen, vision burning. She saw herself, no, someone through her eyes. Standing on the palace steps as wolves howled for her death. Refusing the bond. Refusing Velker. Refusing to kneel. You cannot chain the moon, the queen had said. And I will not be your flame. A dozen elders had drowned her in spelllight that night. Not to kill her. To bury her legacy. Elira stepped toward the silver pool. The water shimmered. And the drowned queen opened her eyes. Not in flesh. Not in ghost. But in reflection. She spoke through the ripples, her voice low, warbled, echoing from the edges of time. You carry what I could not finish. I broke the bond once. But I was alone. You are not. Elira asked, what did you try to become? The voice answered. Not a queen. Not a goddess. Not a monster. A beginning. Finish the spiral. Don't let them drown you next. As they left the temple, the silver mist parted. And on Elira's palm, the spiral changed shape. Unwinding, now blooming into a crescent flower with 9 petals. Each petal pulsed once. And behind her, the waters swallowed the temple again. Only now, when the moonlight hit the surface, it didn't reflect. It sank. That night, as Elira returned to the palace, the wolves along the northern ridge howled. But this time, not in mourning. Not in rage. In memory. And for the first time in recorded history, the palace murals began to change. One wall, previously blank, now held the outline of a woman half submerged. The queen who drowned the moon. And she wore Elira's eyes. Chapter 13, The Sea Wolves Come to Court. They arrived with no warning. Only thunder. And salt. At first, the palace scouts reported a storm gathering along the coast, violent, spiral-shaped, pulsing with unnatural tides. Then came the shadows on the sea. Black ships without sails. Bones carved into hulls. Lanterns lit with moonfire instead of flame. And riding the waves at the lead. A beast. A wolf the size of a ship. White-eyed. Salt-matted. With coral grown through its ribcage and a helm of barnacle-crusted gold tied to its neck. The sea wolves had returned. And they came not to bow, but to see if the Bondless Queen could survive their salt-rife test. Kale stood on the northern battlements when they landed. He said nothing as they dragged their longboats onto the black stone of the outer court, carving scratches in the polished floor as if to prove they didn't care for court etiquette. They wore sealskin cloaks, harpoon-pierced armor, and necklaces of teeth, some clearly human, some not. Their eyes were strange. No pupils. Just frost and fury. One stepped forward, a tall, gaunt woman with sea glass for eyes and a voice like breaking tide. We are the tide-bound kin. We buried our bonds in the ocean. We follow the tide, not the throne. But the ninth moon stirs. And Salt remembers her. She looked at Elira. So we come to see, if you can command the flood. They called it, the writhe. Not a trial. Not a duel. A memory. Summoned through saltwater, stormwind, and ancestral grief. You do not fight in the writhe, the woman explained. You drown. You bleed. You relive what should have never been. If your soul returns whole, we follow. If not. She smiled. We return your bones to the tide. Tezsan tried to protest. Merrick drew his blade. Elira raised her hand. No, she said. Let them test me. Let them see what the ocean left behind. They led her to the flood basin, an ancient, forbidden chamber beneath the palace with walls built from crushed shell and sunken obsidian. There, the tide-bound kin poured seawater from 9 sacred urns into a spiraled pool. The moment Elira stepped into the center, the water rose. The runes ignited. And memory dragged her down. She drowned. Not in water. In past lives. She saw herself as Ceres, the sunken queen, chained to the seabed, the crown slipping from her brow as the elders left her to die beneath a false moon. She saw her mother, not the woman who raised her, but the Luna who carried her in secret, marked by bondlight and cursed to forget the child she bore. She saw Valesai, standing in a storm of wolves, arms outstretched, whispering, I will not die again. And through it all, a voice calling her name. But not Elira. A different name. Ancient. Echoing. Ilaris. The name the sea remembered. She burst from the basin gasping, soaked, shaking, but whole. The tide-bound kin waited. Their leader approached and placed a bone-carved blade at Elira's feet. Salt does not lie. The ocean remembers you. And now, we will follow you to the edge of the storm. Later that night, Kale watched the tide roll in, higher than ever before. The moon hung half-shadowed. His fingers brushed the mark on his wrist. And in his bones, something growled. If she commands the tide, she may forget the land. And you. Far across the water, beneath the drowned ruins of the temple where Ceres was chained, a creature opened its eyes. Its body was made of water and bone. Its voice was a storm. And it whispered the same name the ocean had spoken. Ilaris. Queen of the ninth moon. We are not done with you yet. Chapter 14, The Night the Bond Roared. The moon was wrong that night. It wasn't just full. It wasn't just bright. It was loud. Kale stood on the battlements, breathing hard, every muscle tense. His wrist had been burning for hours. Not hot. Not sharp. But pulsing, like something behind his bones was trying to break free. The silver mark etched by the altar, the mark of the buried king, was no longer dormant. It glowed black now. Coiling. Stretching. And the more the moon climbed the sky, The less of Kale remained behind his eyes. Wolves in the upper towers howled without understanding why. Corian stepped into the shadows of the observation court, hand already on his blade. "He's slipping," he murmured to Merrick. "No," Merrick said grimly. "He's transforming." Even the red-blooded wolves in the outer courtyard began to grow restless. A storm without rain swept through the palace air, one that rattled bones, not windows. And in Elira's chamber, the spiral on her hand burst into light. Not with her power. With Kale's. Elira ran to the moonfire garden. She found him at its center, shirtless, shaking, on his knees. But this wasn't grief. It was evolution. Kale's skin pulsed with shifting veins of silver and black. His eyes flickered between gold, shadow, and white. His voice, when he spoke, was two layered into one. "You should not be near me." Elira stopped. "Kale. I don't remember your name." Her heart dropped. "What do you remember?" He looked up. That the bond was never gone. Only sleeping. And now it's screaming. Without warning, the spiral on Elira's palm lit with silver fire. It whipped around her body like a ribbon of flame, uncontrolled, sentient. It slammed into Kale's chest, straight into the mark of the buried king. And then, the bond roared. Not between them. Through them. Memories tore across the garden, Kale as a child, Kale in war, Kale with Lyanna, Kale watching Elira from the moment she touched the moonstone. Elira fell backward. Kale rose. But he wasn't Kale anymore. The voice that emerged was ancient. Cold. Reverent. Hungry. "I ruled before the spiral. Before the thrones. Before the names were carved in bone." His body shifted, taller, broader, shadow-wreathed. His claws shone silver. His jaw lengthened into something too beastly, too noble. He looked at Elira. "You broke the bond. And in doing so, you set me free." She stood, heart thundering, spiral mark blazing brighter than it ever had. "This isn't your body," she said. "It's his," the voice replied. "And you don't belong in it." He smiled, Kale's mouth, but colder. "I built the bond. I forged the thrones. I watched queens rise and beg me to remember them. But you unwrote me." He stepped forward. "And for that, I should burn you." Suddenly, Kale screamed. Not in pain. In war. The light behind his eyes flickered. And he fought the possession. The black mark on his wrist split open with light. The voice stuttered. And for a heartbeat. Kale's voice returned. "Run. I can't stop it if." Elira didn't run. She reached him. Pressed her palm to his chest. And whispered. "You are not the bond. You are not the past. You are mine." A blinding flash exploded between them. Wolves across the kingdom dropped to the ground, yelping, ears pinned. The moon turned completely black. And in the silence, Kale collapsed. The bond vanished. Completely. No echo. No tether. No voice. Just silence. For the first time since Elira touched the moonstone. The magic between them was truly, fully, gone. As Kale slept in the starlit chamber, Elira stood alone on the highest spire of the palace. And on her palm, the spiral bloomed into something new. A broken crown made of crescent moons. The bond was dead. But the legacy wasn't. And far below the palace, the altar whispered. The first alpha is fading. But the Queen of Nothing has not yet claimed her throne. Chapter 15, The Crown of Blood and Choice. The throne had never felt so empty. Not because no one sat on it, but because for the first time in centuries, it wasn't calling to anyone. For days, the moon crown chamber remained untouched. Its doors sealed with ash bond runes. Its broken crown, splintered during Elira's trials, remained suspended in silver mist, fractured and humming with silence. Elira stood outside it now, alone, wearing no armor, no regalia. Just the spiral mark blooming like a burned rose across her palm. Behind her, Naira whispered. The crown waits for no one. Elira shook her head. It never waited. It chose. And that was the problem. She stepped forward and pressed her spiral-marked palm to the sealed door. The runes flared red, then shattered. Inside, moonlight spilled over cold stone, revealing what little remained. A throne with its back split by lightning. The crown, hovering above it in pieces. The moonstone shards beneath the dais, still pulsing faintly like embers in a dying fire. She walked past all of it. Straight to the forge. The ancient forge beneath the palace hadn't been lit in a generation. Not since Liona's coronation. But Elira didn't need tradition. She needed change. She lit it not with fire, but blood. Her blood. She sliced her palm and let it fall into the coals. They caught instantly, glowing silver red, roaring like wolves under a full moon. One by one, she laid the broken pieces of the moon crown into the flames. And then, added something new. The silver Fong Corian had once offered her as a pact token. A scale gifted by the sea wolf's Leviathan. A single black stone from Kale's altar, the mark of the first alpha. It took one night and one day. And when it was done, the crown that rose from the forge was like nothing the court had ever seen. Shaped like a crescent broken open, not closed like the bonded thrones. Etched in runes that read, will. Flame. Choice. No gem. No moonstone. Just a circle that refused to complete itself. Tez-san approached it first and froze. This doesn't look like a crown, she whispered. Elira lifted it. Good. Because it's not meant for a queen who wants power. It's meant for one who remembers why we needed it. Elira stepped into the throne hall unannounced. No horn. No fanfare. No blood ceremony. She wore black. Her new crown glinted like shattered moonlight across her brow. The spiral mark on her hand glowed visibly. The elders rose in confusion. One gasped. She reforged the moon crown. No, Elira said clearly. I destroyed it. And built something new. This is not the crown of fate. Not of prophecy. Not of wolves waiting to be told who they are. She turned slowly. This is the crown of blood and choice. And I will wear it as long as the pack remembers. We choose who leads us. Not some broken stone. Not some sleeping god. Not even the moon. From the shadows of the high court, Kale stood, healed, quiet, no longer glowing with ancient power. For the first time in his life, he did not feel the bond. And for the first time, he did not feel like he had failed. Because as Elira took the throne, the wolves howled without prompting. They bowed without command. And Kale smiled. She did it, he whispered. She broke everything, so we could finally begin again. That night, after the wolves had howled and the halls had dimmed, the new crown sat beside Elira's bed. She did not wear it to sleep. She did not need to. And in the depths of the palace, where the bones of forgotten queens were sealed, one rune lit up across the tombs. Ilaris. And below it, the queen who chose herself. Chapter 16, The Hollow Feast. The palace had never felt so alive. And yet, not a single wolf truly smiled with both teeth and truth. The Hall of Echoes, once the throne chamber of the first moon court, was transformed for the feast. White banners replaced blood-tattered sigils. Silver torches burned with bondless flame. Tables of moon fruit, roast venison, fire wine, and shadow bread stretched like serpents between the pillars. Elira entered last. She wore no crown. Only the new symbol etched into a silver pin over her heart, the open crescent surrounded by 9 blooming lines. The wolves roared for her. But even above the cheers, she heard it. Silence between the claps. Too long. Too rehearsed. Tezsan was the first to notice. The red-blooded wolves, Elira's most loyal allies, took their seats, but didn't touch their food. Merrick leaned in. "They've been warned." "About what?" "Poison," he said. Tezsan scanned the tables. Her eyes narrowed at the center dish, a moonfruit glaze on silver-spun bread, a ceremonial gift reserved only for bonded rulers. But Elira had broken the bond. So who had chosen this dish? At the high table, the surviving elders raised their glasses. Drenna, the silver-robed matron of tradition, led the toast. "To our bondless queen. May your strength outlast your defiance." The wolves laughed. Elira didn't. Corian, seated across the hall, flanked by sea wolves, watched the cup in her hand like a hawk watches prey. And Kale didn't drink. His fingers clenched under the table. His eyes never left her face. He smelled it. Just as he had once before. A younger noble, eager to impress the new queen, took a second helping of the moonfruit glaze. He stood. Raised his glass. And bled from the eyes before he could speak. Screams broke the silence. Wolves leapt to their feet. Guards drew weapons. The red-blooded howled in warning. But Elira remained seated, her spiral mark glowing brighter, her pulse steady. She knew now. The feast had never been a celebration. It had been a culling. She stood slowly. Held her hand over the flame at the center of the hall. The spiral on her palm blazed silver blue. Let no one leave. Guards froze. The door seals activated, locking with a hiss of runes. The feast was now a cage. Elira's voice was calm, but every word struck like iron. Someone fed this court poison. Not to kill me. But to divide you. To make you doubt each other. And wolves who turn on their own have no place in the world I am building. It wasn't Drenna. It wasn't a high noble. It was a quiet servant boy. Eyes wide. Skin pale. Magic crackling beneath his fingers, borrowed magic. He stood. Trembled. Then said one name. Valesai. Elira stepped toward him. "You don't serve her," she said softly. "You were cursed by her." He nodded. She said, "You had to choose. You can't lead if you remember what you were. You can't rule unless you forget who you were before the throne." He lifted a blade. Poisoned. But before he could strike, Kale appeared behind him, faster than any mortal could see. One blow. The boy collapsed, alive, unconscious. Later, Elira stood in the empty hall as the bodies were removed and the blood cleaned from the stone. The food untouched. The wine undrunk. The crown unopened. She turned to Kale. "She's testing me." Kale nodded. "She's afraid of what you're becoming." Elira stared at the crescent mark on the throne wall, which now glowed not silver, but red. "Then let her fear me." In the mirror chamber of Valesai's broken temple, a vision flickered in the water. Elira at the head of a table. Surrounded by wolves. Alone. And a voice whispered from the spiral. "She builds a kingdom without a leash. But the moon still remembers how to bite. Chapter 17, The Dream That Wasn't Hers. The night after the hollow feast, Elira didn't sleep. She was pulled. It began with a sound. Not a scream. Not a howl. A lullaby, one she'd never heard, but somehow remembered. It came from the glass. Her chamber mirror was fogged with moonlight, though no breath had touched it. The spiral mark on her palm pulsed once. And the reflection moved without her. She stepped toward it, eyes open, mind waking. And walked straight through. She emerged into the moon palace. But it wasn't hers. The walls were white gold. The banners bore a sigil she didn't recognize, a closed spiral bound in chain. The guards bowed when she passed, but their faces were wrong. Too smooth. Too still. She wandered the halls. No one spoke. No one breathed. No one remembered her. Because this wasn't her memory. It wasn't even her dream. It was Valesai's. Elira entered the throne room. It burned. The moon throne stood engulfed in silver-blue fire, and atop it sat Valesai, not monstrous, not decayed. Radiant. Alive. Wearing the old crown of the Moonbond court. And smiling. "You found your way in," she said. "Good." Elira stepped forward. "This isn't your throne." "No," Valesai said. "It was never mine. That's why I'm building it here." She gestured to the fire around her. "You broke the bond. You opened the spiral. Now it bleeds both ways." Elira looked down. The spiral on her palm was glowing again. But this time, it wasn't pulsing with power. It was unraveling. Threads of her magic spun out, forming images: Kale, Corian, Naira, the sea wolves, the red-blooded army. All flickered. All rewritten. "You're not just dreaming," Valesai whispered. "You're rewriting. And soon, you won't know what part of you is real anymore." A door appeared behind the throne. Elira moved toward it instinctively. Inside, she saw a nursery. A crib. A woman singing. The child in the crib had eyes like hers. And the woman wore Elira's face. But she was older. Tired. Unmarked by spiral or crown. She looked up. And whispered. "You were mine once. Before they made you theirs." Elira stepped back, breath caught in her throat. "What are you showing me?" Valesai appeared behind her. "The truth. That you were never just one life. You were always many. Carried in the bond. Remembered by the spiral. And now that the bond is gone, they're waking up." In the waking realm, Naira sat beside Elira's bed. Her body trembled. The spiral on Elira's palm had split open into 9 silver threads, dancing like veins of light across her chest. Merrick stepped into the room. "She's not dreaming," Naira whispered. "She's stuck," he asked. "No, she's walking the rewritten spiral. A memory that wasn't hers, but is now bleeding into who she is." Inside the dream, Elira faced Valesai again. "You want me to become you?" "No," Valesai said softly. "I want you to remember we were never different." Elira raised her palm. The spiral surged with fire. And she burned the dream from the inside out. The nursery vanished. The throne cracked. The mirror between them shattered. "I don't need to be you," Elira hissed. "I just need to remember I'm not anyone else's story." Elira woke gasping. The spiral still burned, but was whole again. Naira exhaled in relief. Merrick didn't speak. But outside, wolves gathered beneath her balcony. Not because she summoned them, but because they had all felt it. Every wolf in the capital had dreamt of the throne burning. And they all woke with her name on their tongues. Not Elira. Not Luna. And in the flicker of its shadow, another crown briefly appeared. One made of roots, bone, ash. And a whisper echoed from nowhere. Your dream is only the beginning. We have not yet touched the waking world.
Every tale you hear here leaves a mark on the world beyond. If this story stirred something in you, leave a like to weave your magic into ours. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice spins a new thread in the arcane tapestry. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Arcane Stories, where myths breathe, shadows speak, and destinies awaken. The next legend is already waiting for you.